Hello and welcome to Westchester Dateline, the cable talk show that gives you in-depth interviews with prominent people in the news. I'm your host, Dennis Rudin. Join us each month on Cablevision, Channel 75, Verizon Fios, Channel 34, or on your computer or iPhone on YouTube.com and www.greenbergny.com. Go to the left-hand green side of the website page and press Public Access TV on demand to view the broadcast right away. We want to make the program interactive with you, the audience, so please email us at profile.issue@yahoo.com. Let us know your opinion about the program and the issues presented. Catherine Parker has long been known for her political activism in Westchester County. This past November, she was re-elected to the Westchester County Legislature in the 7th District, which includes Rye, Larchmont, Mamaroneck, parts of Harrison, and New Rochelle. Ms. Parker also became the new Democratic Majority Leader and currently serves on the Budget and Appropriations Committee. During this broadcast, we will discuss the role of county government in Westchester, the 2017 budget and its implementation in 2018, plus recently proposed and passed legislation. We are proud and honored to welcome Catherine Parker to Profiles and Issues. Catherine, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Dennis. I'm happy to be here today.
Okay, could you explain your role as the Democratic Majority Leader?
Sure. So this past November, in the election that we had that elected a new county executive, it also gave us a supermajority for the Board of Legislators. We have now 12 members of the board that are Democrats. And so as majority leader, I speak for the caucus and work with the caucus to, again, help that our progressive legislation moves forward during this term.
Terrific. The Democrats hold majority in the county legislature, and yet there are some Republicans that were made chairs of committees. For example, Margaret Kunzio, District 3, David Tubiolo. Yeah, thank you for the pronunciation, Yonkers. Is this common to allow the minority to have chairs on committees?
Well, yes, I think actually it's funny mentioning George Latimer's name earlier as our new county executive. You know, he also had served as the chairman of the board for the Board of Legislators years ago, and when he was chair, that was something that he implemented to give, people from both parties, chairmanships. As I've been on the board, Michael Kaplowitz was our last chair. Again, Michael gave some key board positions and chairmanships to some Republican legislators. I think what Ben Boykin has done as chair is, yes, he has given, like David Tubiolo is chair of seniors and constituencies. Certainly an important committee for something that I know David, considers near and dear to his heart. It's not one of the charter committees like Budget and Appropriations, and so that committee went to my predecessor as majority leader, legislator Catherine Borgia. So I think that's sort of the difference between how Chairman Boykin is operating versus how Michael Kaplowitz had operated.
Now, I don't mean to take a sinister approach, but, it is, we do discuss legislation, power, relationships, etc. In national politics, the committee chairs have the power to kill legislation. Does that work also here? Where it never reaches the floor for debate or whatever, or
no?
Or what power actually do the committee champion?
Well, right now the power is really in the proportion of Democrats to Republicans. And again, having a supermajority means that if the Democratic caucus members all agree on a decision of policy, that something is good for Westchester County, 12 is actually, if in fact, say the county executive didn't agree with our policy decision and vetoed that policy, the 12 members who had voted on it originally could vote again to override a veto, and so therefore carry the policy. So I really think that's where the power lays, not so much as far as the committees themselves, because actually on all the major committees, the Democrats, because we do have such a supermajority, we also have the majority on all those committees.
But, I mean, like, who formulates the goals? I mean, what I'm really trying to get to is, what does the chairman do?
The chairman of the
Of a specific committee.
So the chairman is tasked with taking up the legislation that's referred to the committee, whether it's legislation or whether it's something, and it could be sent from both a legislator or also the county executive's office, county attorney. It really depends, but that chairperson, really has to move things along. Now, let's just say there's a piece of legislation that the chairperson is adamantly opposed to, doesn't want to entertain it, has other things that they want to do.
Right.
So what is the mechanism that could be taken next? The mechanism would be that the chairman of the board actually has the power to, if it's been 90 days from the time that something was referred to committee and it hasn't been taken up, the chairman would have the ability to say, you know what, I'm going to put it on the agenda for the floor to vote, and it could go that way.
So that's where the majority really has the power to
Yes.
move legislation.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Could you explain briefly the function and role of county government? Many people seem to be confused about what the jurisdiction of where the jurisdiction of local government ends and county government begins.
I couldn't agree with that statement more, and it is something that I've noticed for many years. I feel county government is sort of the least understood level of government, and it's least understood, I think, for a variety of reasons. One, the county has control of certain roads. And for most people, if they see a road and it's within the borders of a certain town or city, they're going to make the assumption that, oh, that's got to be, a Greenberg Road or a White Plains Road. And so that's something that I think people don't realize, that we actually have, miles and miles and miles of roads all over Westchester County throughout most every community. So that's something that I think people don't necessarily realize. A lot of the infrastructure that people use every single day is county infrastructure, and a good for instance of that is the sanitary sewer system. Every time somebody is flushing their toilet, that's connecting up with the county trunk lines, which is then taking it to a wastewater treatment plant, and there's county government. Another area that I like to talk about, because I feel it's really one of the areas that nobody would want to do without, but they don't recognize that they don't see the involvement, is our health department. Our health department just does a tremendous amount for Westchester County residents, whether it's inspecting our restaurants and grocery stores, our pool facilities for our municipalities, our summer camp programs. It's really ensuring that Westchester County residents are kept safe. And public safety too, another area that people don't see the county necessarily as playing a major role, but we have, for emergency services, for instance, training facilities where every municipality is sending their emergency service people to be trained, and to our Valhalla campus, and it's, I think county government is a very efficient level of government that provides a lot of service. And again, these are the things that people don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. You know, it's not stamped county. And that's on us, too, as county officials, as county government. You know, I think we don't talk enough about all the services that county government provides. And in fact, over the last 8 years, what has gotten lost, not just in the discussion of the services, you know, when we talk about then paying for county government without really attaching it to what county government is, and then people, you know, talking about, oh, our taxes, and that's really the question.
People don't always understand why the taxes go up, and they're confused at times, whether it's the county or the municipal.
And again, what those taxes pay for. You know, if you're getting a bill and you have no idea what this goes to, that would, again, raise a lot of questions when it has to go up. Well, why does it have to go up? I don't understand what I'm paying for to begin with.
This leads into my next question. All right, many Westchester residents, as you said, do not fully understand why the county legislature raised taxes by 2% after overriding Rob Astorino's veto on the 2017 budget. I was at a town hall meeting where a woman brought that up, and she was serious. She was an average person who works, who doesn't get a chance to read all this stuff on county government and all this, you know, the average person.
Yeah.
And so maybe you can enlighten us, such as, from what taxes does the county government derive its revenue from?
That's a great question. So our budget is $1.8 billion. Billion. I'll say it again, billion as opposed to million. Big budget. Now, out of that, the portion that comes from property taxes is it was $548 million. We did pass a 2% increase this year to raise it by just about $11 million. So $559 million comes from property taxes. But as I said, our budget's $1.8 million. So there are other areas.
Do you know offhand how much would be the sales tax?
So sales tax is also about $500 million. So again, it's a significant portion. And then we also get money from state and federal aid. Although I will say, over a number of years, state and federal aid has really been cut back substantially. And in fact, you know, part of the issue, and I'm sure this is a conversation that many people are familiar with, when talking about what we get from the state as far as aid, we have to also look at the things that we have to do, the mandates that come under state government, federal government, programs that the county administers for the state and federal government that we must do for our residents that are not covered 100%, and in fact have gone from being covered, you know, maybe 50% to being covered 30%, 20%. You know, it's getting smaller and smaller, and so that ends up putting more of the onus on county government and also on the local
One of the things that a lot of people are confused about, I myself at times, the school taxes. Is that a county tax? Is that separate? You know, because on one of the charts that the government put out, the county government, they claimed that school taxes constitute like 62.5 cents on a dollar, isn't it?
That's true. And in fact, to your point, that the majority of your property tax does not come to the county. In fact, we're generally, you know, it goes municipality by municipality, but generally we're the smallest portion of a, you know, the property tax bill. You know, somewhere around 15 cents on the dollar, or 15% is for county, whereas you would have, yes, 62, 60, even, you know, higher than that for your school taxes. Then you have your local municipality, and then special districts like, again.
Right, then they have the city, town, village. That's like 22.5% approximately. Mm-hmm. And the county, they have only like 15 cents on the dollar.
Right, it's a small portion, but again, understanding that everybody is, you know, every level of government needs to be looking at, you know, are we running government efficiently? Are we spending people's money wisely? and understanding it's the same dollar at the end of the day, so we all have to be looking and very mindful.
Part of I don't mean this to be partisan, but part of the, misunderstanding or case during the past election, the county executive, Rob Astorino, says, well, I didn't charge you. I mean, I kept down the levy on the property taxes, and yet, according to what you're saying, not that much of it is really county taxes.
That's true, but I will also say this, that our previous county executive, while he did claim that he kept taxes flat, I would argue that, in fact, taxes were not kept flat. There were, while the bill to pay the taxes there was not an annual increase, there were other things that were done that, again, put that to pay later. There was a lot of borrowing for a lot of operating expenses that, again, kind of hid the fact that there was a tax increase.
I wanted to ask you this because this came out by one of your colleagues. The money that's allocated for projects, like if it's bonded, does it have to be spent, or can the county or can the executive branch decide that they just don't want to spend it? Because a number of projects that were designated were never finished. Was that because of cutoffs in departments? Was that because of that? They ran out of money. I mean, or they were they weren't quoted accurately what the project would cost.
So there was a huge backlog of infrastructure projects.
What causes that? That's what I'm trying to get to.
And what causes that is, let's take a bridge. The Ashford Avenue Bridge was one that was in desperate need of repair for many, many years. Or we could take the Sprain Pool, which a lot of people are aware to this day has not fully opened yet. The county executive, maybe one of the departments would send a proposal for a bond act to go to design for a project. The board, our responsibility is to appropriate those funds, so we would vote on it. We would agree that this was a wise investment for the county. And then what failed was that once that happened, there was never, the bonds weren't sold. They wouldn't go to market for those particular bonds. So they weren't actually funded. So you had a lot of projects that there seemed to be agreement that we needed to repair roads, repair bridges, repair a pool, and yet there was never the final going to market to get that money so that we could get the job done.
Did the county actually take on more than it could do? Did it overpromise?
I think in many ways it did overpromise, though I will say from the Board of Legislators' point of view, we felt that infrastructure was absolutely sort of the basic level of service that taxpayers want to see. They want their roads repaired. They want their bridges not to, be dangerous. They want to ensure that there are, that there's adequate busing, for instance. These things are all very important and necessary to running a.
So, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're really saying is that in order to keep the taxes down, they gave less service.
I think in many ways, yeah, I think we did lose something these last eight years. And there's a backlog, and that's the challenge right now to our new county executive. But to go back to the 2017 budget for a minute, this is sort of an important thing. The 2017 budget, the 2% increase that overrode the county executive's veto, that was bipartisan. We, at that time, it wasn't just while there was an election in November, we were still dealing with basically a Republican-controlled Board of Legislators they all voted in favor of this 2% tax increase. Why? Because the budget that we were given post-election was not a balanced budget. It had many holes to it. We were given contracts in December that the previous county executive had negotiated that were not fully funded in the budget. It had an airport deal that was to privatize the airport to bring in extra revenue that we had not seen a lease agreement for. So there were these huge holes to the budget that we had to enact one way or the other. And so going to a 2% tax increase seemed like at least a step in the right direction. Did not fully close that hole. So unfortunately, we're going to be dealing with the Astorino hangover, as I think of this time going forward, for quite a while, playing catch up, trying to figure out ways where we can, again, close that gap. And it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, plus you have problems now with the federal government
Yes.
taking away less money with a conservative government. And then you have Governor Cuomo who's trying to figure out how to reshuffle the tax structure for New Yorkers so that they don't get killed on the 10% property, itemize their deductions.
The SALT
I'm sorry, over
deductions.
$10,000, yeah.
Right. Yeah, the state and local tax deduction.
So you people are going to have a lot of challenges this.
Indeed, there's no doubt, and again, the fiscal responsibility that we have to Westchester taxpayers. There's really no way to understate the importance of that. So I think this year, we have a new county executive, and the new county executive is looking fast and furiously. There is some low-hanging fruit. There is some good news here. In 2015, we created legislation to create the position of an energy director. Now, that you may wonder, what does that have to do with taxes? What it has to do is that we know from a report that we had from a consultant that we could be saving taxpayers millions and millions of dollars if we just implemented energy efficiency in all the municipal buildings that we have around the county. And that is a step that I think will help alleviate some of the problem. So we are going to be looking for creative solutions to find ways that it's not just about raising taxes on the taxpayer.
How about from your vantage point, serving on the board, what would you recommend to the current county executive not to do that the previous county executive did so that you don't get into a problem where you fall behind on projects and,
Well, I think the current county executive, again, is going to be looking for ways to work with our board. And that is actually the new thing. That is what's different. I used to hear from even my Republican colleagues their frustration that the executive branch previously, while they're two distinct and separate branches of government, that there was no communication flow between the executive branch and what they were trying to do to the legislative branch.
There was no partners. You were doing separate dances.
Absolutely. And I think that this county executive, County Executive Latimer, has really made it a priority to work with the board and ensure that we are in communication, that we understand, again, the challenges that we have, and that we try to work together to come up with the solutions. And I know that sounds like a very simple statement, but frankly, it's a huge shift in attitude
and philosophy of government. Yeah. No, I know. I attended. He's been to Croton-on-the-Hudson. He's been to Portchester. He's going to other places. I know he stopped briefly in Greenburgh. I think he's going to come again and address people. He's been going all around speaking to people, regardless of their political affiliation, to try to get everybody's viewpoint. That I know.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, does the county pay for Medicaid or not?
Yes, it's New York State is the only
That's a big
state,
cost.
It's a huge cost. New York State is, I think, the only state in the union that still puts 25% of the responsibility for Medicaid on the counties. It's a sharing with the state. And so for us, that amounts to, you know, over 200, I think it's about $240 million. So it's a huge obligation that we have. And again, to the mandates that come down from the state and federal levels, that's, you know, a huge burden. And at this point, you know, I recently met with the Department of Social Services and heard that, you know, when the federal government implemented the
tax.
Well, Obamacare, basically.
Oh, Obamacare.
When that happened, our number of, you know, as people were signing up for the state, the different programs, they found that some people actually were not at the threshold, and they ended up on Medicaid. Our number of Westchester County residents that are on Medicaid jumped from 100,000 people to 200,000 people. Again, about 20% of our county. So it's a huge obligation that we have as a government.
We only have a couple of minutes. I want to try to get these two questions in. Are the funds for the 2017 county budget locked in place, or are they subject to change from the state and federal budgets this year?
No, they're locked in place, regardless of, you know, what happens in Washington or what is happening in New York.
So the pain will be felt next year, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right. Any recently passed or pending county legislation? In other words, I know you passed the
gun show ban.
The gun show ban. Is there any possibility that you would consider passing, or do you have the power to pass a ban banning the sale of automatic assault weapons?
Well, I think that the state, under the SAFE Act, has a ban on assault weapons. It's the semi-automatic. And so I think that there's certainly, we've pushed back where we have some control. I don't know that we have control on a county level for county policy on assault weapons. But I can tell you one thing, that we definitely feel that anything in our power to push back against gun culture in Westchester and protect our residents, that we will do.
All right, and we've only got a minute or two. The Immigration Protection Act and the paid sick leave for government employees, what's the status on that?
So the Immigration Protection Act, I think we will probably be looking at passing that at our first meeting in March, which is the 12th of March. We've had great stakeholder meetings with our public safety departments and also with the advocates that had worked with us initially on the passage of the Immigration Protection Act in the last term. And we have been able to come to some consensus among all stakeholders. And so I think we're just about ready to vote that out. I'm hoping that that'll get voted out of committee maybe in the next week or so.
All right, yes or no, because we only got a minute or two. Is the county legislature planning to have public hearings on the present master plan and investigate reports of environmental hazards concerning future operations of Westchester County Airport?
Yeah, I think that a lot of us feel that we need to revisit that master plan and take a second look at that. As far as the environmental issues, we've already had a meeting on because there was a consent decree. But yeah, that's moving forward.
Catherine, I want to thank you very much for coming on Profiles and Issues. Pleasure to have you, and we want to have you back, okay?
Well, this was great. Thanks again.
My guest has been County Legislator Catherine Parker. This is Dennis Rudin saying so long for Profiles and Issues.